Welcome to Homes That Heal, the podcast that transforms your life and home into a sanctuary of health, healing, and happiness. Hi, I'm Jen Heller, a wellness educator, infrared sauna expert, and your guide to living intentionally. Each week, we'll explore a variety of wellness tools, along with detoxification, weight loss, and anti-aging tips to boost your energy and align your mind and body so you can thrive in life, not just survive. Your health is your wealth, and it all starts at home. Let's dive in and create a home that heals. Hey friends, Jen here. Welcome back to Homes That Heal. Before I introduce my beautiful guest today, I just want to say thank you for all the kind words and caring concern for a few comments I made on last week's show intro. If you missed it, no worries. You can go back and listen. But most importantly, I just want to let you know everything is okay. I'm okay. I don't have a major health situation going on. I'm not going anywhere. Everything is okay with Mark. And for a few very curious peeps asking, no, I'm not having a baby. What I can say are just a couple of quick notes. Everything is okay. It's more than okay, actually, because God always gives us what we need and what we need to learn. And God gave me an assignment earlier this year that no doubt was one of the greatest challenges, but created one of the greatest gifts and joys of my life. I know that seems a bit cryptic, and my apologies for that, but I hope that you tune in next week when I explain and dive into it all. It's a raw, real, and a very beautiful story that I think will not only touch you, but probably many people you know as well. So I can't wait to share it with you. So please tune in next week when I let the cat out of the bag. Also, for those of you who are like me leaning into fall vibes right now, it's the season for releasing, decluttering, and cleaning out closets, decorating your home for the holidays, or maybe you're looking inward at your health and well-being and deciding you want to create a wellness space under your own roof. Whatever the mode you're in right now, please, please, please be sure to take advantage of the resource guides on my site, jenhellerlifestyle.com. The Jen Recommends pages are loaded with all of my favorite brands, books, tools, and connections. It's all there for you, all in one space. And for those of you looking for any fabulous gift ideas, we'll be having a show on that upcoming actually as well. But also check out the Jen Recommends homepage for a few of my faves, including the Balu weighted blanket I'm obsessed with. Anyways, okay, let's talk about the amazing Chris Newport. Chris is one of those women you meet one day and instantly you're like, I feel like we've been friends forever. And I'm so grateful I know you. I'm not kidding you when I say we talked for nearly 3 hours the day we recorded today's show. And we were both thinking, we seriously could chat for days. It was such a beautiful conversation. She is so amazing. She's not only a beautiful, bright light, but she's also deeply respected in the health and wellness and athletic endurance space. Chris is a sports dietitian and exercise physiologist who helps endurance athletes and active adults build lasting energy, resilience, and health. She combines genetics, nutrition, and performance science to create practical strategies for longevity so people can thrive at every age, which I love. I think we all need to thrive in our own way at every stage in life. She is the founder of the Longevity Nutrition Coaching Program and host of the Find Your Edge podcast. We dial into a lot today, folks, so sit back, enjoy, and please welcome Chris Newport to the show. Hello, welcome back to Homes That Heal. I'm joined today by Chris Newport. How are you today, Chris? Thank you for joining me.
I am great. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh my gosh, we're going to get into so many topics today. I have a million questions and a lot of different things I want to get into, but one of the most interesting things that I saw about you that you just shared on your social recently is this Xterra World Championship trip of a lifetime that I believe you took to Italy, and yes. I want to hear more about that. So walk me through that.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So I got into triathlon back in 2003. And when I finished my first race, it was so life-changing. And little did I know that it was going to turn into a career. And then several years later, had an unfortunate incident with a vehicle. And my husband was like, nope, you're not riding on the road anymore. And so and he rode mountain bikes and he's like, "You're coming with me." And I was terrified. I was like, I don't know how to ride over these rocks and trees and it's scary. And so I spent the next, golly, probably 15 plus years, like, just having a love of riding my bike. But I was like, oh my gosh, this is terrifying. And it's so much like life, right? Sometimes you just have to let go and you just have to trust.
Yeah.
And so that's what mountain biking is for me. And then I found Xterra. I was like, oh, cool. Triathlon with mountain biking and trail running, like in nature, which is also one
Yeah.
of my favorite things. And last year, and I, had kids and life, business, all that has just kind of gotten crazy and got away from training. And I was like, you know what? This year I'm going to challenge myself. That's really kind of one of my core values. And I was like, this is going to be a challenge. Like, can I do the Xterra National Championships? And as it turns out, I did it. Now I was second in my age group, which sounds fancy, right? But the first place person gets like an automatic girth to Worlds. And there's this woman who beat me fair and square. I mean, this woman was insane, but she was also from Argentina.
Mm.
So if you're going to be the national championship, then they have multiple national championships like across the world. But in order to be considered the national champion in your country, you have
Mhm.
to be of that nationality. So I was
Oh,
driving
interesting.
home. Yeah, I was driving home from Alabama to North Carolina where I live. And they called me and they were like, "We're so sorry, but you actually are the national champion and we missed it. And, congratulations." I was like, okay. I mean, she really did beat me. So, and then a couple weeks later, I got the email like, "Hey, you qualified for Worlds. It's the last year they're doing it in Italy." And I told my husband, he was like, "Well, do you have to go? Like, it's like, you have to go."
Yeah.
So then I got to training and went over there, and it was the most insane race experience I've ever had. Just like it was so hard. It
Yeah,
was
I was
so
gonna say,
muddy. It was so beautiful. It was like all the terrible and wonderful things all rolled into one. So it's crazy.
well, that's why I wanted to ask you about it. And I mean, you're a sports dietitian, exercise, like you have all of these things. But I saw this trip that you recently, just a few weeks ago,
Yeah.
and of course it's gorgeous and nature. But I thought, what were like the most challenging like what's most challenging about something like that? It looked uh not dangerous. That's not the right word, but what were like your biggest takeaways? What was the most challenging from it?
Yes. So, number one is don't trust the weather apps. um, the the weather when we had started was before we left, the weather was going to be much warmer. When we got
Mm,
there, it was so much colder. So the conditions deteriorated that week.
yeah.
The water got colder, the air got colder. So that was a challenge that I had not prepared for. I would have brought more stuff
Yeah.
to prepare for it. So the water was 62, which, for like cold plunging, you're like, "Ah, that's nothing." But, to swim 1,500 meters, and I had my shorty wetsuit, which is no sleeves and no like legs. And I was the
Yeah.
only one in the entire race to be wearing that. So I had people like looking at me. They're like, "Are you insane?" I'm like, I mean, apparently. So
No, I just didn't know. I know, that's what I was saying. I was looking at those pictures and I was like, it
yeah,
looks frigid. It looks like this was a very challenging experience
yes.
when I dug into it a little bit. That's
Yeah.
why I had to
It was
ask.
yeah, so it was colder, so I didn't warm up as properly as I would have. I had like a mini panic attack at the beginning of swim, which has never happened to me before, which is unfortunate because this water was so blue and it was just
Mm,
so like I mean I could see everything. It was just like the tealest, most beautiful color. So to not really be able to fully enjoy that was kind of a bummer, but like, got through it, glad to get out, glad to get warm. And then this bike was it was so hard. First of all, it was like pretty much you like climb up a hill and then you descend it and then you do that twice. And one of the pictures that was on there is that you get to ride through town and like down this like little set of stairs, which was really cool. My husband stood there and was like taking pictures, and he was like, oh my God, so many people wiped out. There was one person like carried away like in the ambulance, and like just but the big thing about the bike, not only was it very steep, which I, had prepared in my mind, but it had rained all week that week and all the week prior.
Hmm.
And then they had opened the course that Monday, and it was a Saturday race. And then you have all these people like riding it, and then it continues to rain. So
Hmm.
the course just deteriorated and it was just the most mud that I've ever seen in my life. Like it was just, and there were parts where you had to just push your bike through this mud and you would just slide all over the time. I mean, I fell multiple times, like not even riding my bike, like pushing it both up and down. So, yeah, it took me 4 hours to ride 20 miles on a mountain bike, which, if you don't have any context for that, that's fine. But it was a long time.
Yeah.
Um, and then once I got to the run, which is my favorite portion,
Yeah.
also very muddy, but I was like, screw this. I'm just getting this done. It's going to be fun. You're already muddy. You're already disgusting.
Hmm.
And that was finally an opportunity to actually like get somewhat warm because the weather really didn't get above 50.
Mm.
So you're swimming, biking, and running in in these tiny little outfits and
Yeah.
just mud everywhere. So it was wild. And then, you look up and you're like, oh my gosh, it's the Dolomites. And like, I can see the lake from here. And like, it was, yeah, it was crazy.
It sounds very surreal. And I mean, I'm not a triathlete. I'm not an endurance athlete. Full disclosure for for anyone listening, and just to be totally honest. However, short story, and why I was kind of interested to learn a little bit more about what you do and how you work with trainer, or how you train and work with athletes. And we'll get that to a second. But
Yeah.
years ago, when I got into the wellness world, wellness found me. I did not find it. I was sick, overweight, toxic, had a stroke, all the things, right? Like all the basic lightning bolt things that come at you, and then all of a sudden you have a decision to make. But one of the decisions that I made early on when I was really, really struggling was, I wanted to run. Like I knew I needed to move my body. And I felt like if you want to lose weight, you have to move the weight, right? Like you can't just sit and wish it away. But when I was over 100 pounds overweight, and somebody who's, obese, it seems like, you talk about riding up a hill, like it feels like such a massive hill to climb. And where do you start? And I remember the day, I can tell you exactly what I was wearing. I know exactly what it was, but I remember the day I decided I'm going to just start walking in the hopes that I could maybe be a runner someday. Like I see all these ladies in their outfits and they're just like running away and they look all, I'm like, I don't need to look like that, but I want to move my body with ease. I remember feeling like, why can't I want to be able to move my body with ease? And so
Mhm.
I put on my shoes. I remember I looked outside and I was like, oh, my neighbors out there, are they going to see me running? And what are they going to think? And I went down to the end of the driveway and I knew it was 0.6 miles from the end of my driveway to the highway. And I told myself that I was going to start out walking, and then I was just going to do light little jogs, 1.6 or zero point 0.6 and then back. And that's literally how I started to become more fit. And I just started moving my body in short little, so I started like training myself, if you will, to kind of be a runner. Well, after I felt like I conquered that, then I went the other way, the other direction, out my driveway, which was 1.3 miles to kind of a fork in the road, like a Y in the road. And
Mhm.
so then I started challenging myself to that distance. If I could get there on a light jog, or even just walking and then jogging, walking, jogging. And then, after a while, it's like, oh, I can jog this whole way. And then I would jog myself way back. Well, fast forward, a bit of time. I don't even know how, and next thing I know, I'm running 5K. I did my first 5K and like all these things, but it was like this conditioning. And so running for me was not something that I was going to do severely overweight, but it was a way in which I could start moving my body and then finding what my body needed for like nutrition and fuel. And I just got curious in all these other areas. So I share that story because it's very personal. It's really how I got moving in this direction. But what you do to work with people um, what's the word I'm looking for? To like, to work with somebody to find that endurance and find, train with them. So would love for you to share a little bit about who you work with, um, you know, uh, what you've learned over the year, like basically walk me through a little bit of the evolution of, the dietitian piece, the exercise, and how you work with people to train them.
Yes. So I'm going to go back a little bit to
Okay.
when I was in high school. And that's when I really discovered my purpose and now my passion. And that was being on, I was on a volleyball team. And I remember just like desperately wanting to play. And I was on the bench. And the
Mm,
coach she like only played her starters. She played favorites. And I was just like, just put me in, just put me in. So tying that into like your story of everybody deserves a chance and they all deserve to feel good in their bodies and about their bodies. And we should be moving. It's just inherently how we should. Now, however you want to do that, that feels good to you is
mhm,
great. So that was sort of the original impetus to being like, I want to be a coach because I want to help people learn that their body is worth it and that they can do amazing things with it. Whether you
mhm.
do a world championship and, or go to the Olympics or you just like run to the end of your street and back. Like
Yeah.
amazing, right? And the way that you progressed was like such a beautiful progression of let's just start small and just keep putting one foot in front of the other. So that's kind of how I started, in personal training. And then eventually I was like, man, I feel like there's such a big gap of, yes, the exercise and movement is great, but like, what are they putting in their bodies? So then I went back to school, became a dietitian, and of course, but really obsessed with sport and certainly endurance sports. That's when I found triathlon, and so that's when I started to just like you're describing running. We like to get people into triathlon and then we take more intermediate athletes and then they're like, okay, I like this. Now I think I want to do a half Ironman. Maybe I want to do an Ironman. And this year we're introducing a racing team. So like for competitive triathletes who want to go to
Mhm.
worlds and who want to, break records and things like that. So it's kind of the whole gamut of endurance athletes. But then I also found that people were coming to me, they were endurance athletes. Typically, they would also be like, is it okay if I'm not an athlete? Can I still work with you? I'm like,
Mm.
of course, right? They had a passion for wanting to be fit and healthy and active. And a lot of other people in the field don't necessarily have that lens. So as I started to work with that population, finding like, oh, there's more to this story too, right? Like health is just so multifaceted. It's not just, I got to eat more protein or did you get your macros today? Um, so then I started exploring things like micronutrient testing and food sensitivity testing and um, and now into genetic testing, and then have eventually grown into creating this really interesting longevity nutrition coaching group, sort of aimed at, yes, people can be endurance athletes, but they don't have to be. They just have to have this like desire to know that they can be more amazing through food and behavior choices and using their genetics as a bit of a blueprint rather than just being like, I went on this Whole30, which nothing against Whole30, but like as an example, right? Like, and I
Right.
get that everybody has to start somewhere, but it's skipping that step and being like, what specifically do I need?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that actually brings me to a question I wanted to talk about is nutrition. And I mean, we're all living, I'm 44, so I grew up in the 80s and the 90s. We've all been in these evolutions of, you mentioned Whole30 and there's keto and there's this and there's carnivore and like all the things. And it's like, we've all tried a number of different ways. I mean, I was a vegan for a little while, or I tried different things. And I don't think, and I guess this is just my opinion, I'd love to hear your thoughts on, but I don't really think there's a one size fits all for everybody because everybody's doing different things. I would imagine a triathlon runner or triathlon athlete needs a little bit different than a person, who's not training to do that. So let's dig into nutrition a little bit. My question is for people listening, like basic fundamentals for those that want to just be active and create like longevity in their life. And like, what are some non-negotiables or some things where you're like, it doesn't matter if you're an athlete or somebody who is just wanting to live a healthy, balanced life. Like,
Yeah.
what do you find are the fundamental things, non-negotiables? And like, what do you see are people, I don't want to say making a mistake on, but anything where it's maybe trendy, but it's not the right thing. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, totally. Yes. I mean, golly, I probably had 6 different ads just this morning about like, try this collagen thing and try this colostrum thing. And, I'm just like, oh my gosh, I feel so badly for people. Like, it's just so much messaging and like you're missing out if you don't do this trendy thing or
Yep.
take this fancy pill. So it's a lot, but part of our sort of longevity process is what we call master the basics. And I have 4 of them. And this is like, you can be an Olympic athlete or you can be a mom who's not quite active yet and sitting at home. It doesn't matter who you are. These 4 things are like my non-negotiables. So number 1 is getting enough protein, like hands down, especially with the onset of like GLP-1s. And I mean, we're just seeing so many people losing lean body mass. Especially after the age of 40, really, and certainly after the age of like 60 and 70. It's just such a quick decline of losing lean body mass. And that's so crucial for being able to just continue with life, right? And push off sarcopenia. So sarcopenia is what we originally thought was the natural loss of lean body mass. At the end of the day, if you don't use it, you lose it. Because, skeletal muscle is at the end, or it's sort of the bottom of the rung of important things. Like your body has to keep your heart going, your body has to keep your brain going, your liver, your kidneys, like they do a lot of work. And it's like, okay, well, I can sacrifice the skeletal muscle because it's not as important as the rest of my organs. So you really have to move your body and then in turn, support it with protein. It can come from vegan sources. It can come from animal sources. Like that gets a little bit more nuanced into like genetics and what you believe in or don't believe in, right? Like I decided several years ago, like I'm not going to fight with what somebody's ethical beliefs are. It's not worth it for me. Like I'm just here to support you along the way of what you need and what's going to support your longevity. So protein's number 1. The RDA is like super low. They just want to keep you alive, but they don't necessarily want to keep you well. So our typical ranges are a little higher than that. And then next one is hydration. Like you got to have it, and like you just got to have it, right? Good, healthy water, which I'm sure you know all about in terms of its like, potential for toxicity. Like if you can do anything, get good quality water because that's what's going into you so much, like literally every day and in a fairly large quantity. So water's 1. And then I call it like, get your color, basically like eat your rainbow. Like we need fiber. And if we can get it in the form of fruits and vegetables or just plants in general, fantastic. Like there was a great meta-analysis done on fiber and like basically it was like really, really conclusive, which is so rare in nutrition research. Like it's hard to be like thoroughly conclusive, but fiber leads to longevity. So like y'all gotta poop. And again, detox, right? Like you gotta poop every day, 1 to 3 times a day. Like eat your fiber, eat your fruits and vegetables. That kind of ties into the hydration thing. And then the last one, which is like non-negotiable, is ensuring that your portions are correct. Because if you're too lean or if you're too small or if you're too large, then it can create issues from a longevity perspective. The healthier bones, the healthier blood sugar, whether you're like too high, too low. So it's kind of like a little Goldilocks in terms of like eating the right portions. I will have to say that that's probably the hardest thing to execute.
Yeah, I was actually just going to say, like, how does a person determine that? Like, I know how you can figure out your protein and certain
Mhm.
things, and that is, of course, based on your activities and such. How
Right.
does a person understand portions? Like, how do you measure that? Out of
Yes.
curiosity.
So our easy way of doing it is you got two tools. You got your plate and you got your hand.
Mm,
So, some like if I took
hmm.
my hand to your hand, like we probably would have
Yep.
we probably have pretty similar, like probably relatively similarly sized. But like if I took my husband who's 6 foot, or if you took somebody who's 6'4", like they're gonna have bigger hands.
Right.
They need bigger portions. So if you have no gram counting or weighing mechanism, and I'm not saying that you necessarily should, but generally speaking, for your plate, if you can get at least a quarter of your plate to be some sort of good quality protein, a quarter to maybe a third,
Hmm.
and then fill the other third with a bunch of, vegetables and plants and whatnot. And perhaps even the additional third can be like additional carbohydrates, things like that. So it also depends on your activity level. If you have lower activity, you need fewer additional carbohydrates, more fruits and vegetables. And then if you're more active, kind of like what you were saying, like, oh my gosh, how do you fuel for this? I mean, basically, it's more food
Right.
and um, more general calories coming from some of those additional carbs.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So your plate can be a really good tool, and then your hand can be a really good tool. Like, a serving of like a fruit or a starch is roughly what can fit in your hand. We like to use carb exchanges too, which is um, like what you would do for a diabetic.
Hmm.
So the amount that you would use, that your body needs 1 unit of insulin to process. So like
Okay.
a type 1 diabetic would say, okay, I had 45 grams of carbs at this meal. I need 3 units, right? So I kind of treat most people as if they're a diabetic because blood sugar regulation is huge, and then plays into it even more when there's a genetic component to that. So,
Okay. Yeah. I think that why that's such a curious question to me is because we're living in a world of like all you can eat buffets
oh yeah.
and the portions that you get at a restaurant. Like I literally buy 2 meals. When we go to a restaurant, I come home with another meal for the next day. But oftentimes people feel the need, if you're at a restaurant or whatever, you just like eat it all. So portions, I think, is just such, I mean, that's a whole education piece on it itself, like based on what's healthy versus what we're doing, so to speak, in society. Like
Yeah.
it's really on us to be our own advocates in that department and be
Hmm.
very, pay attention, listen to your body, and then just start with the right amount of stuff in the first place, the right amount of
Yeah.
food and nutrition, and eat the things that are most important, like the proteins. I just find it interesting, a restaurant where they bring in the breads and the soups and they put the breadsticks on all these things that really, before they bring you the entree, before I want like the vegetables and my meat, all this other stuff comes in front of it. So you have to have discipline. You have to be disciplined to be like,
It's
no,
it's
I'm
so
gonna hold
hard,
out.
and that's where I'm sort of, like, newly obsessed with behavior and behavior change. Because when I first started as a dietitian, I'm just like, "I'm gonna just word vomit all over these people and tell them all the things I know." It's like, "Okay, that did nothing." Like,
So
information is not the problem. Integration is really the key thing.
yeah.
And, there are societal expectations in a restaurant. Like, I will give you so many things. Like, I will give you the bread basket, and like it's like, I will satisfy you in this way that is like throw these like massive margaritas and these huge plates. And it's like, no, that's not really what we need. But,
Yeah.
that's kind of what our expectations have become, especially
Hmm.
just having come from Europe. It's very different over there. Like,
Oh.
they like, you ask for the check, that's because they expect that you're just going to stay and relax.
Ugh.
It's not like this rush, rush, rush. Like, how could you not get my salad out before the rest of the meal came? So
Hmm.
it's also a very American thing to eat more and to want it
Hmm.
fast, and then to eat fast. And then we're not allowing our parasympathetic nervous system to turn on when we're like shoving food in our face. And
Yeah.
so there's a lot of behavioral pieces. And Dr. Brian Wansink out of Cornell, he's got a couple of books on mindless eating. He has got fascinating research on exactly that.
Oh, wow.
No.
Yeah, I actually just saw something yesterday and I shared it with my husband because I'm like, this is so interesting. I'm going to completely butcher it and I don't even know who it was, like a reel or something from somebody's podcast. And it was a guy, maybe it was Dr. Will. Can't think of it right now. But it was just a short snippet about how people enjoy their food. And you could, so the analogy is you could enjoy the food, you could eat the food very, very quickly. A person could prepare the same meal. And if you're eating it quickly, basically herding you in and out like cattle, so to speak, and you're not really thinking about it. And you mentioned the nervous system, you don't even give the body time, or your body, like your palate to even absorb what you're eating. You're just like shoveling it in, shoveling it in, shoveling it in versus a family that sits down and hugs each other. This was all about human touch as well. Hug each other, pray over the food, understand like the food was prepared with love, and you sit and you eat it and you take little breaks in between and you're like, nurture this meal, and you look at it actually as fuel versus just something you have to do. It's more like a nourishment for the body and you enjoy it. Completely different experience. They say it tastes different. Your body assimilates it differently. Like everything about the meal, the experience, as well as the way in which the body breaks it down and absorbs it, and how you absorb it from like a stress factor standpoint is completely different. It was fascinating to me. I watched it twice. In fact, I'll share it with you. I'll send it to you. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, wow. And again, this is not new information to me, right? Like we all know this, but when you really look at it that way, it's like, gosh, we do need to slow down a little
Yes.
bit with some of the stuff. And when you're slowing down, you're also going to eat less because you're going to be more intentional, and you're going to allow the body to send you the signal of like, hey, I've had enough. Like I'm full, I'm good here, versus like shovel, shovel, shovel. So
Yeah. And
yeah.
that process, so I mean, like how you're describing when like the oxytocin from like, the hugs and like being with
Yeah.
friends or family, like that's really important for feeling good because oftentimes we reach for food when we're stressed and we need this
Mm-hmm.
like dopamine rush. So when we slow down and whether you say like a prayer or take 3 breaths, it allows and I'm like doing it right now. I can feel it right now.
I
Like
know.
when you start to think about it, you start to salivate, right? So you have
Mm-hmm.
salivary amylase. That's one of your enzymes that helps to break down carbohydrates. And then the rest of the enzymes, and there's a ton of them that start to release and do their job in your stomach. Your stomach better produces hydrochloric acid, which is necessary for vitamin B12 absorption, for iron absorption, for breaking down the proteins that you just ate, and then better mixing everything up in your stomach in order to create this nice ball of stuff that goes into your small intestines, and thereby you start to absorb it. And when you're in a
Mm-hmm.
stressed state, though, that enzymatic process doesn't happen as efficiently. And similarly, the hormones that indicate that you're full don't turn on as effectively. And that typically, and we see that in some of the genetic testing that we do for some folks in terms of like their appetite propensity. Like, are you somebody who's like, I mean, you probably know them. There's these people who are like, oh, I forgot to eat today. And then there's the people who are like, oh my gosh, I like have to eat like right now. So we have this leptin and ghrelin cycle
Mm-hmm.
that takes about 20 minutes until your stomach receptors start to stretch. And then those receptors are like, hey, we're good, we're full. But most of us probably, like, if you time yourself tonight, you probably don't eat. And I mean, not you specifically, Jen, but like, if people like time themselves,
Yeah.
they probably don't take 20 minutes. They probably eat a whole lot faster. And then
Yeah.
you don't get that appropriate signaling to your brain that says like, hey, you're good. You don't need any more.
I'm
So
definitely a 20-minute eater. I'm a slow eater because I do these things. In fact, it's interesting when you're at a restaurant or when you're with other people and you realize when you're paying attention to it, and no judgment on anybody by any stretch. But I have noticed that like I will thoroughly just enjoy my meal. I will set it down. Like I like food and I like to taste it, but I'm a slower eater because I do like to enjoy it. And especially if you're going to a restaurant, it's like you're paying to be there. You're paying for a fabulous meal and someone's preparing it for you and bringing it to you. Why would you not sit back and revel in that? Like
Yeah.
you know, when I'm traveling by myself too, I go out once in a while. I love a good solo dinner and I will sit there for 2 hours and just eat my meal, maybe chat with some people. Like
Yeah.
I just,
People watch. I love people watching at
yeah, people
meals. Like it's,
watching. Like
yeah.
I will eat a slow steak, a 7-ounce steak, as slow as a person can eat it because I just like to enjoy it. But yeah, I feel like we could do a whole show on nutrition, and maybe we should because I think and that's why I asked the question. Is so many people are like, what should I eat? How much should I eat? When should I eat? Did it? It's like I love the four basics. So thank you for sharing that. I think that
Yeah.
that's a really good baseline for
Hmm.
people to at least, get those things fundamentally good, right? Like start there before you start worrying about supplement,
Whether
all these
you're
other things that,
fasting or what
right.
schedule it is, or is there how much protein and how much fruit.
Mhm.
Yeah. You just
Right.
got to start by, yeah, like
Start,
get your
start with the
water, get your
basics.
protein.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you mentioned water, and that's actually one of the things I wanted to ask you too. Is and I think I already know the answer to this, but I'd love to hear your description on it. Is as you know, like my house is basically like a wellness sanctuary. It's funny you mentioned water because my water company was here this morning changing my alkaline filters on my RO system because it's pH balanced and alkaline. Like we have the most phenomenal water system on our house because clean drinking water is so important.
Mhm.
And when we bought this home, there was known arsenic in wells in the area. So we had ours tested. It came back where there was some, thing. And I was like, okay, we need to manage that. Like well water is fantastic, but it doesn't mean that it's perfect. There's things in the groundwater system. So I hired this company, they came in, we have this system on our home. And I just think it's fundamentally important, not only the water that we drink, but also the water that we're showering and bathing in and
Oh,
brushing our
yes.
teeth in is equally important.
Hmm.
So I'd love for you, the air we breathe, the water we drink, like what do you, I think all of it is so important, but how does this play into somebody who's trying to train or be an athlete or lose weight? How important are these basic clean air, clean water, clean lifestyle? How important are they in your words? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah. I mean, and that ties into our genetics because we are all so different. I did
Hmm.
a really fascinating continuing education on mold
Mm,
detoxification. And that was enough to tell me I am outsourcing that. It's so complex.
yes.
But for the genetic testing that we do that helps with action items is it doesn't matter whether you are, you know, an athlete or not. That to me is clean air, clean water. Like that's like thank you for being a human on the planet. You deserve that.
Right.
Right? I don't care whether you're an Olympic athlete or whether barely exercise or don't like it or whatever. I feel like that's something that we all deserve. Period.
Yeah.
Right?
Not only do we deserve it, but we need it in order to thrive.
Yes.
All of
Yeah.
these different tools and all of these things that we're sold or that we have available to us, in my opinion, and this is my conversation with people every day, it really doesn't matter what you buy, what you bring into your home. I can create the largest wellness fortress on the planet, but if you're living in a toxic soup or you have mold or you're drinking water that's loaded with carcinogens, you are going upstream with no paddle.
Hmm.
You can throw all the money and time and effort at it. Your sleep's going to be disrupted. Everything in your entire system is going to be off kilter until you get these fundamental basic things, particularly in your home, but also in your work environment, depending on where you're going, or where you're spending a majority of your time. Those are ground zero basics and why I created this show,
Yeah.
actually.
No, and it's so important. And I typically see people who are likely in those situations and then they start to exercise because they're like, oh, okay, I want to start, to train or I want to start to work out. But like whatever I'm doing for nutrition just isn't working. So what the heck is going on? And that's when we
Hmm.
have to start to peel away the layers of like, what's your dentition like? Do you have any fillings? Like, were you breastfed as a child? Like all these like baseline that where are you getting your water? All these baseline things that are looking at like what's the history of your microbiome? And then what are you continuing to feed it now? It's like,
Right.
uh, for a lot of athletes who maybe have iron deficiency, I kind of relate that to like a little Dixie cup with a hole in the bottom, especially menstruating women. I'm like, okay, you're losing some blood every month, which is a great detoxification method for women. But then if you're not able to get it in, whether you don't absorb it right or whether you're not getting it via your food or diet, then it's like, then what are we doing?
Hmm.
So you got to lay the groundwork first in
Hmm.
order to be able to support all, like, if you want to be a great athlete, fix your water, fix your bed, fix your pillow. Like, I mean, there's at least start with the water. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, you have an interesting test I saw on your website too. That was one of the things, the sweat test and the VO2 max test. Like, what are those? Tell me a little bit more about that. And
Oh,
I saw you
yes.
have home testing kits too. So that
Hmm.
the first thing I was like, is this something I got? Where do I got to go? I'm
Yeah.
like, do I need to get on a plane? No, you have this available.
Yeah.
So tell me more about
Yeah.
that.
Yes. So when we train endurance athletes, typically we start them off by doing metabolic testing, which involves VO2 max testing. So if you've ever seen someone, somebody on a treadmill or on a bicycle wearing those
Mm.
lovely
Yep.
blue masks, in order to create a seal so that you're measuring how much oxygen is going in and coming out. So it's in essence measuring the size of your engine. And when you're
Mm.
starting off exercise, your engine's going to be pretty small because it's not very tuned, right? And what I mean by your engine is when you take in oxygen and then you send it to your working muscles, you are able to do work, right? The more oxygen you have, the faster you can go. So high level athletes, Olympic level athletes can take in up to 6 liters of oxygen per minute to function. And that's going really, really fast.
Mm.
That's like sub 5-minute mile. We're talking like 4-minute mile. Like there's a lot of oxygen. There's also some great correlation to how VO2 max, so the maximum amount of oxygen that you can take in to do for work, is correlated with longevity. So in other words, it's like the use it or lose it that I talked about with the skeletal muscle. It's the same thing with your heart and lungs, right? Cardiorespiratory
Mm.
fitness is just as important as keeping your muscles nice and strong. So VO2 max I kind of look at it as like a physical. Like, do your VO2 max to make sure that your heart and lungs are staying nice and fit.
Hmm.
There's an assumption that it will decline over time, which is why we see, Olympic athletes typically in their teens, 20s, 30s, and then, you're old when you're 40 or whatever. I'm always like, oh, it's so depressing. But
Yeah.
that doesn't mean like lose hope and stop doing the activity. If you stop it, then you'll lose it.
Right.
So we use that to help people create their appropriate training zones. So they're not
Hmm.
always training at the same pace all the time, that they're
Okay.
nurturing their ATP and their mitochondria, doing this sort of zone 2 training, if you will, which is like easy peasy lemon squeezy, using your fat efficiently as an energy source and lower VO2 paces. And then we've got more of this kind of threshold work. But I feel like the challenge, and this is especially true for my men who come to me, they're always going really hard all the time. Or my women who want to lose weight, they're not necessarily training for an endurance event, but they want to lose weight. They're always going to their boot camp classes, right? And
Mm.
they're overworking themselves and they're not nurturing their mitochondria as well as they could be. So we use it as a tool to help people train in the right zones, and then also looking at that cardiorespiratory fitness and as a longevity marker. And then if somebody is doing sweat testing, so we're in North Carolina, it's friggin' hot here. Like October right now is like fabulous. I think it's 70 degrees out right now. Yes. And
Isn't this the
I'm
best
like in a
weather?
sweatshirt, right? So
Yeah. I know, but this is like fall. This is like the best, like the vibe and the crisp air.
yes.
But like this is the best time of the year. I don't care what anybody says. I'm a heat warrior. I like the summer, but this fall vibe is where it's at.
Totally. I love the fall, but in the summer, We have people who sweat a lot and they have issues with cramping, and, they might be training for a half Ironman. They might be training for a marathon, a half marathon, like whatever their event is. They typically know, they're like, I sweat a lot. It's almost like a running joke. I'm like, but do you? And they're like, no, I do. So, I had one guy on the treadmill once, like he was like a cartoon. Like it was just coming out of him. Like it was coming off his elbows. Like I had to step back and I was
Oh
like,
my
I'm so
gosh.
sorry. I'm not sweat shaming you, but this is so much sweat. Um, so we look at the electrolyte content in their sweat, because if you're losing so much volume and then your sweat is like your fingerprint, so it just has electrolytes in it. And some of us have really potent sweat and some of us have not so potent sweat. So if they lose a lot and they're losing a lot of electrolytes, typically there's going to be some sort of issue. They struggle with having to slow down. They struggle with cramping, nausea, dizziness, fainting. So then we help them fuel and hydrate appropriately to match their sweat needs so that they don't have those issues anymore.
That is
So,
fascinating to me.
yeah.
That is so cool. I was curious when I saw that. I was like, okay, I'm in the sauna business. I'm like,
Oh,
okay,
yeah.
I'm like,
Mhm.
well, and we need to talk about that more because obviously detox pathways, infrared
Mhm.
saunas is
Mhm.
releasing athletes use these tools as as they should but
Yep.
you could be sweating too much. Like that's one of the questions I get asked all the time, like, can I use this every day? Can I use it twice a day? Because people want to go to the edge, they want to be on the max. It's like,
Mhm.
hold up, like there's such a thing as too much sweating, or like you're not putting enough back in. You need to
Mhm.
replenish hydration, electrolytes, all that stuff. So I feel like we should come back to that maybe at some point and maybe
Yeah.
take a deep dive on that. That'd be fun,
Yes.
just because
Yes.
that's an
It applies
interesting
to
topic.
fasting too,
Yeah.
fasting, sauna. Yeah, there's some people who just really lose a lot of electrolytes in their sweat,
Yeah.
and you don't really know unless you test it. So if
Right.
if somebody were in the sauna for extended periods and then later on they're struggling with, things like cramping or like excess headaches or, so it's almost like too much for them.
Right.
So they just may need to more appropriately replenish those electrolytes. So,
Yeah. Well, to go back to something you said earlier, it's like we are not shortchanged with information. What we're shortchanged is discerning what's good for us. And like what, how there's people are trying to do too many things as far as I'm concerned. They're
mhm.
trying to throw everything with the kitchen sink at it, but they actually don't have the data and the information on how that's actually impacting their actual health and longevity.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden they hit a wall and it's like fatigue, cramping, dehydration, kidney stones. Like now all of a sudden they've
Oh,
got
yeah.
problems because they've, caused a backup. You got liver problems. There are ways in which all of this stuff needs to be kind of harmonized, just like nature. Like you can't overwater a plant or the thing's going to die, right? And you
Yep.
can't underwater. So it's finding that rhythm and that balance. So um, I want to mention before we wrap up, you've got the longevity nutrition coaching program,
Yep.
which I think is fabulous. So for anybody who's interested in learning more, working with you, I know you were very generous and offer our group a discount, the Homes That
Yeah.
Heal discount. So that's fabulous. Thank you so much for doing that. But kind of tell a little bit about what that program is, where people can find you, and like what that step looks like.
Yes. So, like I had mentioned, this is sort of a baby that's been born. It's about 2 years old now, from those folks who want that more discerning information that's specific to them. And
Hmm.
that, so the science piece, and then blending it with the psychology piece of like, how do I actually integrate the information that's necessary for me? So
Hmm.
putting all of that together. So we do like live coaching calls, and then we do genetic specific calls. Everybody brings their PDF. And like, 1 week we'll talk about just detox. 1 week we'll talk about inflammation. 1 week we'll talk about caffeine, salts, various nutrients, and then everybody can kind of get a little bit nerdier about their own stuff, and then we do like a more specific deep dive. So it's really interesting to see the interactive version of the genetics that we've got, and then people will share their genetics with their permission, obviously, so they'll get some more insights into their needs. Everybody does a one-on-one with me. Our next opening that we have for our longevity program is early November. I'm going to be doing a 7 steps to longevity webinar. That's going to be, I believe it's November 6th, Thursday, November 6th, 1 p.m. Eastern. So you can sign up on our website at theenduranceedge.com. And then that kicks off into those 4 days where we open for November. It's a 6-month container. And then after that, it kind of turns into a bit of a membership because people oftentimes like the accountability from the regular calls.
Yep.
And then always learning something new about their genetics. And then I'm trying to update them as much as possible on things like, infrared saunas and how does this relate to things like detoxification that they need additional support in. So it's a really cool and unique way to take what typical nutrition is, like a one-on-one window, into getting the coaching piece, getting the genetics, getting their specific protocol of what they need to do from a nutrition, lifestyle, and supplement perspective. And then they get like the encyclopedia of genetics. And then what I was just telling you about, like mastering the basics, they get my 7-step process of like how to meal plan based on your personality, how to master the basics, and then like the next steps, like what are the next things to get into. I mean, everything from how to talk to your family at the Thanksgiving table, because these things are affecting my job. So it was kind of one of those things that like, okay, I have to figure this out. I have to help people try to navigate the conversations they have with their friends and their family.
Yes.
And that's sort of the more psychology and science blend. So and it's all intended to help them live a long, healthy, active life, whether they're a triathlete or not. Like, it doesn't matter as long as they care about fueling themselves in a way that supports their needs for a lifetime of health, vibrant living.
Thank you so much for all that. That's all amazing. I know when I first was learning about you and realized that you work with, elite athletes and stuff, at first I was like, I'm not an athlete like that or whatever. But after you think about it, it doesn't matter where anybody is on the athletic spectrum. This is basic nutrition. This is basic longevity. This is basic lifestyle. Like, this is just the way in which you're going to either survive or you're going to thrive. And whatever that looks like for you, whatever your fitness or endurance goals are, like that's different for everybody. But yeah, it's the lifestyle, the behavioral stuff, how you want to feel, how you want to sleep, and how you want to enjoy a meal with your family and friends. So I love all of it. Thank you so much, Chris. I feel like we could talk all day, but I know we got to roll.
Yeah. Thank you, Jen. This was amazing.
So fabulous. And we will definitely talk to you again soon.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, friends and fellow wellness warriors, thanks for tuning in today. If this show was helpful and inspired you, please head over to Apple or Spotify to rate, review, subscribe, and follow us, as well as share it with your friends and family. It's a fantastic way to grow the show, expand my reach, and teach others how to create a vibrant life they love. If you're ready to invest in your health and purchase a Clear Light sauna, hop on over to jenhellerlifestyle.com and send me a note. Thanks again for tuning in. I love you. I'm grateful for you. And I thank you so much for your support. You are the reason I do this work. You are the reason I do this show. And you are the reason I get up every single day with a burning desire in my soul. Cheers to your health and happiness, my friends. We'll see you next week. This podcast is for general information purposes only and is not intended to be substituted for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. If you think you have a medical condition, consult your licensed physician.